This 2021 Cleveland Cavaliers Autopsy Report episode of the Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network, is brought to you by a presenting sponsor who's been with us all season long. You know them well, Aligned Health Center. Aligned Health Center is the first chiropractic biophysics clinic in Northern Ohio. The team at Aligned Health Center helps patients with back pain, neck pain, migraines, ADHD, digestive issues, sleep disturbance, whiplash, scoliosis, and much more. If that's you, listen up. Aligned Health Center can help you. And along with chiropractic biophysics, Aligned Health Center is also the leading clinic in regenerative medicine. You may have heard it as stem cell injections. And listen, you don't have to be an NBA player to get this done or have this treatment or even figure out if this can help you. If you have low back pain, shoulder pain, knee pain, arthritis, check out the regenerative medicine clinic at Aligned Health Center. Come in for a free consultation, get some imaging done and x-rays to see how Aligned Health Center can help you. No multiple shots, and it's complete with the physical therapy built into the process, so there's no downtime. And look, it gets even better if it's possible. Aligned Health Center doesn't charge people for x-rays or exams. They don't bill you later. They let you know right up front, right away, how much the whole treatment is. They are transparent. That's why they're number one for a reason. Call Aligned Health Center today at 440-385-7357, or you can visit their website at alignedhealthcenters.com to make an appointment and to learn more about how Aligned Health Center can help you. Again, that's 440-385-7357, or visit alignedhealthcenters.com. And if you haven't heard, Press Play Podcast is really making some noise in the podcasting world, along with our incredible sports talk lineup, which features Dennis Maniloff, Kenny Rhoda, and Michael Red Guy on R&R, and Jeff Thidoff talking fantasy football, basketball, and baseball. We have Up Next to cover all of your streaming TV shows and movies. Our newest show, Producing While Asian, launched during AAPI Heritage Month. It highlights Asian American, Pacific Islanders, and other minorities in the entertainment business. Hosted by Don Mike Mendoza, Producing While Asian features names and stories you need to hear. Allow Don Mike to introduce himself and the podcast in this quick 2-minute preview.
Hello, everybody. My name is Don Mike Mendoza, and I am your host for the Producing While Asian podcast. This podcast was born out of the blog of the same name, Producing While Asian, that you can read at www.producingwhileasian.com. This podcast was made possible by Press Play Podcasts and comes to you every Wednesday in Asian Pacific American Heritage Month in May, and then every second and fourth Wednesday starting in June of 2021. This podcast will contain conversations with AAPI producers, entertainers, actors, singers, songwriters, and anybody that touches the producing industry. And we get into many of the topics that surround our community within that industry, including stopping Asian hate, representation matters, how producers can make a more equitable and comfortable working environment for those that they hire, as well as the future of the industry as a whole. So we'll dive into those topics and many more on this podcast. And if you, the listener, have anything that you'd like us to talk about that we might not have discussed this season, we invite you to contact us at producingwhileasian@gmail.com. You can also stay up to date on social media on Facebook and Instagram at Producing While Asian. And we also have a YouTube channel of the same name. So we hope you'll watch our video teasers of each episode there, and then tune in here and on any major platform where you can download your favorite podcasts. So again, my name is Don Mike Mendoza, and I'm your host for this season and beyond for Producing While Asian, the podcast. I hope you enjoy.
You can catch this and all of our shows on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our website, pressplaypodcast.com, and wherever else you listen to pods. In this episode, Sam and I talk about the Cavs' problems, recap the 2021 season, and look ahead to the future. Let's get to the show.
Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
That sound means it's time for Cavs on the Break NBA podcast from the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm your host, Chase Smith, and with me, he's the editor and writer at 48minutes.com, the assistant editor at Outkick.com. He's our Cavs insider, national NBA writer, Sam Amico. Sam, the season is over. Stick a fork in it. It's done.
Yeah, the basketball season is over, but the real season of importance is already started. So there's a long summer to look forward to. That's for sure.
And I'm sure we will talk about the NBA playoffs over the next couple months. But right now, Sam, it is time for the Cleveland Cavaliers 2020-2021 autopsy report. And let's start with some end of season reflections and thoughts before we dive into maybe the cause of death and what exactly went wrong with the stats. Just at the end of the season, the playoffs have started today on Wednesday, May 19th. What is our takeaway from this season, Sam? What, if you're a fan, are you telling yourself? Where do you find hope going into next year? What is this? Where do we stand?
From the fans, obviously, that have a positive outlook. You talk about the younger players with, Garland, Sexton, Okoro, Jared Allen, throw Larry Nance Jr. in there, as I always do. And then you talk about, you're going to have a top 10 draft pick, probably top 8 draft pick. And you just look at it that way. Those are the things that you're pinning all your hopes on. And at worst case scenario, you will have those 5 guys back moving forward, and they're still incredibly young players. And then you have, in the minds of Cavs fans, ideally you get the number 1 pick, but you definitely want to finish in the top 5 in the lottery. Actually, that's not true. Definitely, I think you can still get a pretty good player wherever they draft from 1 through say 8. I think they can get a guy who could come in and make if not make a big impact right away, at least help right away. So that's worst case scenario, is that that's all they're going to do is come back with these guys and hope for the best. But I think they're thinking bigger than that.
So we're looking at this as an autopsy report because the Cavs are in the worst shape of any professional team in Cleveland. They had an awful year. It seems that the moment they benched Andre Drummond, the team just rolled over. They lost that was a huge turning point, linchpin in the season. And Sam, we're going to end the episode with a cause of death. So we're going to build up to that. All right. But it really just felt like a complete waste. Pretty much the past, I would say 5-6 weeks, it just felt like, can the season end now? It really just not fun for a Cavs fan. It was awful. It was like they were dying this slow, horrible death, and every fan was dying a slow, horrible death with them.
Yeah.
It was not a good experience.
Right. And I mean, you factor in the fact that they weren't real deep to begin with, and then you throw in all the injuries that just every team suffered an array of injuries. The NBA didn't do the players any favors with this, cramming in 72 games. It probably should have been a 50-game season. And but speaking strictly on the Cavs, you throw in a lack of depth, a lack of experience, and then injuries on top of that. It was just too much to overcome. But there were other issues. But in a nutshell, that's kind of where it went wrong in terms of losing 16 of your final 18 games and not being real competitive in the games you lost. So yeah, it just wasn't. You had to stay healthy to have any sort of hope of finishing strong, and they didn't stay healthy, and they certainly did not finish strong. And I mean, the problem is you're a business. You're not just a basketball team, you're a business. And I mean, does anybody else talk about them but me and you anymore? I mean, it's just it's gotten to the point where there's not a lot of buzz about them. There's almost no buzz. You went straight from Brown's season. The Cavs had like a month in there where people, other than the same 17 people on Twitter who are real loud about them, they just didn't draw
Shouts to Hiram, by the way. Shouts to Hiram, dude. Shouts
Right?
to,
Yeah.
I know he listens.
Yeah.
I know he
Well,
cares.
he's
Shouts to
one of
Hiram
them.
right there.
He's one of them, keeps the buzz alive. But I mean, other than that, there's really a very small, loud or vocal crowd of Cavs fans on social media, but that doesn't make you money if you're the Cavs. It doesn't, and that's, you're in the business to win games and make money, and they lost a lot of both this year. I can
Look,
assure you of
Sam,
that.
you mentioned theft. All right. And so I want to ask the question, what's the crime? All right, because you have the Browns who are making all the smart moves, all the right picks, and they are a legitimate Super Bowl contender.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. You have the tribe, the Cleveland Baseball Club, who had a lot of kind of fan outrage going into the season, but they're overachieving.
Yeah.
And
right.
This isn't the first time the Dolans have made everyone upset, but the club has played good baseball. They have a great management, Terry Francona. They have a great farm system. It seems that they do have a plan, and that's not to pay a lot of money for primetime players, but it works. And they're overachieving.
They're scrappy. Yeah, they're scrappy. And that's what the Cavs ideally wanted to be this year. They wanted to be, we heard JB Bickerstaff at the beginning of the season say, we want to be the team that nobody wants to face. Well, they were that for probably 6 weeks. They were the team that people were like, oh, these guys are annoying. They play with determination. They're hungry. They're
pre-All-Star break. They were 14-22.
I would say probably up until the first, that's 36 games. I would say the first 25-ish games, they were that team. But then that slowly started to dissipate. And part of that, in my opinion, from just watching them, was the loss of Drummond when and not just the benching of Drummond, but they lost him pretty much when they made that trade for Jared Allen. And they knew they were going to lose Drummond at that point when they said, let's go out and get a young center. They pretty much knew, which surprised me because I thought this is an odd time to tell Andre Drummond we're done negotiating. I think that they had, the money to pay him. They just didn't want to pay him an exorbitant amount. So whether you like that or not, that's what it was. And
I'm here to say, if you make those moves, you have to have the play to back it up, because you can't have those moves. Even before that with Kevin Porter Jr., that kind of started this like, hey, what's going on here? You can't make those moves and then play like crap. You can't do that.
Well, they're making those moves because they want to build the quote unquote that we hear all the time, the positive culture. But those moves are not building a positive culture. You don't build a positive culture when the GM, and I'm not saying Kobe Altman did this, but if the players feel as if the GM is just going to ship them out of town or bench them at the first sign of trouble, then it's not really building a positive culture. Those moves to build a positive culture did not do that. And more than anything, Chase, you lost Andre Drummond, who's a veteran. You didn't have Kevin Love, who obviously is not the same guy. You didn't have him for a large chunk. And then you traded away JaVale McGee for a 22-year-old. And, Isaiah Hartenstein showed promise, but you don't have those veteran voices. And that you don't have a veteran in the locker room who's been there. JaVale McGee had won 3 titles. Drummond had been to the playoffs. He's a veteran. And Larry Nance Jr., who is a veteran voice in a sense, and has played in finals, is, he's not gonna ride you like a Tristan Thompson would, for instance, a Tristan Thompson or a JaVale McGee, or a Drummond, who's a big guy who has been to the playoffs, who's led the league in rebounding. You didn't have those voices, and those voices in the NBA are so critical when it comes to winning games, that type of experience. And when they rid themselves of those type of players, it went downhill fast. And I mean, in their defense, there was also a lot of injuries that were key and played a role in their decline.
So What's the crime? Theft? I have a thought, Sam. I want to say willful neglect, and here's why. And this is it's a winded answer, but their alternate rock jerseys were awful. They were awful, and people shared that they were awful, and they didn't care. What did the Columbus Crew do whenever their fans said, "Hey, this is awful"? They said, "Oh, okay." They heard the fans and they made a change. They didn't care about the product on the court. They neglected playing talent. They neglected trying to work through that. No matter how hard they had to work with Kevin Porter Jr., no matter whatever was going on with Andre Drummond, like they neglected the impact they could have had on the team. Sam, we would be playing in the playing game right now tonight if we had Kevin Porter Jr. and Andre Drummond. I have no doubt about it.
They would be if they had those two, everything else, all things considered, and probably had kept McGee, throw him in there. I think that they would be if they weren't playing in the play-in game, they would have been really, really close. I think they probably would have been playing in it, but
and the final
looking.
And the final thing that makes me feel like it's neglect and not theft, because the fans could choose to not go, but they signed Anderson Varejao. What leverage do they think that would, like, what goodwill do they have with anyone who cares about the Cavs, like, to sign Anderson Varejao? I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve to be like end his career as a Cav.
Well, there are other ways to do that.
There
are other ways to do that. You don't need to put him in uniform. You could just bring him back for a day and sign him, and then say,
felt very disrespectful to me.
It
felt like they didn't care about the fans, and they did not earn that, from my point of view and perspective, front office to pull that stunt that early before the season ended. The crime is neglect, and I'm all fired up, Sam.
Well, I think that you have to be careful, and I've talked about this numerous times. You have to be careful accepting being bad and coming up with thousands of excuses, which is we're young, we're injury prone, we're going to get there. One thing that's troubled me, Chase, is here we are. When did the season end? Sunday. We're at Wednesday, and we still don't know if there is going to be an end of the season press conference, or they certainly haven't held one. Usually by now, GMs and coaches have already, if you look around the league, like Orlando and these other places, their general managers and coaches have already spoken. And I think that the reason for that is because there's an air of mystery around the front office, in terms of, will they be back? Will Kobe Altman be back? Is Dan Gilbert going to make a change?
It's neglect. It's neglect. They aren't caring about the fans.
Well, and again, right. The thing I experienced the most from the people I know that are Cavs fans was apathy. That about, I don't know, before the 10-game losing streak, even, I knew a lot of fans who had just tuned them out. I know a guy who, we were playing basketball, and he said, "Boy, the Cavs played the Lakers last night, didn't they?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, it was like 1:00 the next day, and he said, "Who won? I have no idea." And to me, that just spoke volumes. It's like they don't even care at this point. So, I mean, fans aside, I think that the front office, has to get some luck in the lottery, regardless of who's in the front office. And they've got to make a deal or two just to get the fans back in it, the casuals, who will pay to see a player. Maybe that player's already on the roster, but this past year he wasn't. Nobody was going to pay to see these guys put up points and lose every game. That's just not the way a business works. That's not the way a winning team approaches things. You have to get somebody out there who's a real difference maker. And in my opinion, maybe these guys will grow into that. Maybe Darius Garland will grow into that. Maybe Colin Sexton will grow into that. And we've certainly seen a lot of signs from both of those guys. And I don't want to write them off by any stretch, but the bottom line is if we're just evaluating this season and not, not everybody saying, oh, well, Sexton was a leading scorer, he's great off the ball. That's all true, but it's not resulting in wins. And at some point, these guys need to come together and start winning games and getting in these play-in games and getting playoff experience, as opposed to being told, well, we're okay. We're going to be back in the lottery. We're getting another guy and all this. At some point, that just gets old, and you don't trust the organization to win games.
You cannot lead. You cannot manage a basketball team in a vacuum. And It's insane that the front office didn't learn a lesson with the Kevin Porter Jr., didn't learn a lesson with the Andre Drummond. It blows my mind that they're just so concerned about whether they want to present something on the same message. Like, I don't know the holdup, but you cannot operate like this in a vacuum without having people be upset, without having players be like, what is going on?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, Sam. I don't see how do they fix this?
Well, you have to be open to, you can't just say, this is what's going to work. What we're doing right now, this is what's going to work. We just have to wait for these guys to get more experience and get older. That can't be your only plan. You have to put people around them. The one thing I will say is, okay, let's say you can keep these core four. Okay. But they still don't, and we've talked about this before, they don't have that one guy that you think, this is an elite player. This is your Anthony Davis. This is your Kawhi Leonard. This is your Giannis Antetokounmpo. You don't have that guy. You don't have him. Now, maybe you can get him in the draft. I think that's their best chance right now, is to get him in the draft, because people don't trade players like that. But if you have to make a trade of somebody who's a cherished player here, whether it's a Sexton or Larry Nance Jr., or to go find that kind of guy, then you've got to make that deal and not just say, and you know what, they would. It's not like they wouldn't if they could get a player who's going to come in and make an immediate difference, who's young. I just don't think you would get that for what you have to offer. But the off season brings contract squabbles, money issues, that type of thing. That I mean, they probably could have gotten Russell Westbrook had they known they were going to be willing to trade KPJ at the beginning of the season. Had they made that deal and offered KPJ and a few other things, a package centered on Kevin Porter Jr. would have brought you Russell Westbrook. And again, people say, well, I don't want 32, but you know what? Look at all the fun they're having in Washington, and look at what Westbrook has done for that franchise.
I love Russ.
And you can still keep your young guys. You could still keep your core young guys. It's. I'm not saying they should have traded for Westbrook, but I'm saying that those kind of deals will be out there this offseason, because they always are. And the
maybe
Cavs
like a Paul
need to
George.
do something.
Right.
Well, they need to do something to pump some life into the franchise.
Yeah.
And that's where they are.
Jaylen
right
Brown would be a idea. Well, anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Sam shaking his head. Jaylen Brown, you're wishful thinking again. We devoted a whole episode to Ben Simmons, so I don't mind dreaming about what this could be. Well, hey, we're going to take a quick break. I'm all fired up. The crime, willful neglect, and we're going to look at the marks and wounds, and you get a cause of death here at the end. But Sam, stick with us. We'll come back and break down the Cavs into the season.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. We read one book a month and then we talk about it. Books like Stephen King's The Shining or Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. If you're on the hunt for book recommendations and enjoy sparkling conversation, come read along with us and then listen in.
You've been pining, you've been waiting for Rega and Rhoda to get back together. We gotcha. Press Play Podcast. We're ready to go. We're going to have our podcast with everything that you want. Browns, Cavaliers, Indians, Ohio State, the national scene, Kenny Rhoda, Michael Regai back together again. Make sure you keep your ears open. It's happening right here on Press Play Podcast. See you then.
For the Dennis Maniloff Show, I'll tap into my 40-plus years of following Cleveland sports and 30-plus years of writing and talking about them, so as to bring you informed opinions and analysis of your favorite players and teams. I also will monitor the national sports scene and, when warranted, step out of the toy department and into the real world. And I'll always be on the lookout for special guests. By all means, join us.
Hi, my name's Jeremy Powell, co-host of the Oranges, Oranger, Browns podcast. Check us out anywhere you listen to podcasts. For all your Browns coverage, post-game, pre-game, anything you need Browns, you'll find it here on the Oranges, Oranger, Browns podcast.
Hi, my name is Sam Post, owner of Phenomenal CBD Store and PhenomenalCBD.com. That's like phenomenal, CBD.com. Tune in where we talk with experts about how the amazing hemp plant can make a difference for people's health and well-being from the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey, it's Tito, host of the Premier Fantasy Podcast. Get all the news and analysis you need to dominate your fantasy league. I've been doing this as long as anybody in the business. I can help give you the edge in your leagues. It's the Premier Fantasy Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Want to hear more about your favorite TV shows and movies that are on countless streaming services?
Then listen to Up Next with your new favorite hosts, me, Kristen Aviles,
and me, Christina Walter.
Every other week, we'll highlight one genre, but 2 movies or TV shows, one old and one new.
We'll let you know what's hot and what's not from your favorite
or least favorite
streaming services.
And be sure to stay tuned to the end of each episode where we shout out an artist whose name you should know for their talent in the industry.
So follow us to stay up to date with your favorite hosts from Up Next,
a part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey, it's JD from the Hyman Podcast. I created this podcast to have hard conversations. Conversations that make us human but are also wildly uncomfortable. Conversations that help give voice to the voiceless and to the marginalized. Now you can listen to the entire first season on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Consider this your personal invitation to join the conversation.
All right, we're back. Sam Amico, Chase Smith, Cavs on the Break, NBA podcast from the Press Play Podcast Network. Sam, I'm looking here at a blank autopsy report, and there's a section for marks and wounds. You kind of mark on the body where they were punctured and what was going on. So let me give some end-of-season stats. And if these aren't marks and wounds, I don't know what are. The Cavs are 22-50. Okay, 13-23 at home, 9-27 away. They had 2 losing streaks over 10 games, one 10-game losing streak, one 11-game losing streak. You mentioned before the show, over the last 3 seasons, the Cavs has the most losingest record in the NBA. They were 8-28 after the All-Star break. They averaged 103 points per game, 3 points down from last year's cluster F. Averaged 10 threes a game, 1.2 threes fewer than last year. Averaged 15 turnovers a game, which is one better than they averaged 16 last year. The only bright spot in the team, Sam, the only bright spot, looking at all of the at a glance here, is they were 25th in the defensive efficiency stat compared to last in the league last year.
Yeah, so they raised to not dead last to near the bottom.
Sam, we're grasping at straws. Marks and wounds. Which one of those, or maybe one I didn't mention, is the most glaring and the one that is just like the hardest to swallow?
Well, I think the offense was the one that stood out the most to me, because they do have, we obviously see Colin Sexton can put the ball in the basket. Darius Garland, when he's durable and can be out there, can really do some nice things. But other than those two, who did you turn to as kind of your reliable third scorer? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. It was Drummond before. it looked for a while when Jared Allen first got here that it might be him. I don't know that he's reliable. I just think he was almost the third scorer by default. And he's got he's got a great field goal percentage.
Did they pick Isaac Okoro expecting Kevin Porter Jr. to have a bigger role in the team?
No, I think that you went into the season expecting Kevin Porter Jr. to have a big role because, after his finish to 2019-20 was pretty strong. And I think that they figured, Okoro would be about where he was offensively and that he'd develop into a better defensive player. Okoro, I can't give him a legitimate grade because I think he led the team in minutes.
He led all rookies in minutes, I think.
Yeah. So, it's hard to give him a grade other than he was out there a lot and he got invaluable experience. And really, the end of next season would be the time to say, okay, Okoro is what he was when he was scoring 16, 17 a game there toward the end of the year.
Which I owe you a dinner, by the way, because I dropped 50 on him being Rookie of the Year, and he's not going to win that.
Well,
I knew he was going to get a lot of minutes, and I banked on him being just like 10% better at the game of basketball his rookie year, and that would have done it. But
he came on better toward the end of the year, and that's what you're hoping for. You look at the leap Darius Garland made. My only concern with Garland is durability and is he going to be able to stay healthy and survive the rigors of an 82 game season? And I think he will. You look at like Steph Curry was injured all the time early in his career. And then you figure it out. You figure out how to use your body a little bit better, how to avoid injury. I think eventually Garland will be there in terms of that. But to me, I don't even know what I'm just rambling on, but I think that, Okoro definitely deserves more time. Garland deserves more time. And, to me, the question mark is Sexton. Has he hit his ceiling? Which is if he has, this is a pretty good ceiling. But is he going to be the best player on a team that wins a lot? I don't know. I can't answer that yet, but I have my doubts. And that's again, people get real personal
Sure.
about that, but that's the bottom line. You usually judge a player after his third year. You give him 3 years to see what he can do and to think, okay, he's getting pretty close to his ceiling right here. And Colin Sexton's ceiling's very nice, but he's a odd fit in terms of basketball because you're presumably ideally going to bring in your number one guy who's going to be better than Sexton, right? Who's going to have a bigger role if you want to move forward. Will he be willing to take that secondary role, maybe third role if Garland keeps improving? So, and maybe he will. Maybe, I'm not saying Colin Sexton would never do that, but that's a hard sell. It's a hard sell when you have a guy who's led your team in scoring for 2 years. He's been great for 3 years in terms of determination, effort, all that, checking all those boxes. Do you take the ball out of his hands a little bit more for the purpose of success? And if you do that, does he accept it? So I don't know. Those are questions that only that Kobe Altman or whoever's in the front office next season is going to have to answer because, you're going to have to pay the guy. Now, you don't have to do it this summer, but you're going to have to do it in a year.
For comparison, the best offensive team in the NBA, the Dallas Mavericks, they make 13.8 threes, almost 4 more threes per game, and average 112 points compared to the Cavs 103 points. So looking at kind of just like the stats, I pulled the 10 threes a game. That's concerning in today's NBA, Sam.
Yeah, they didn't have, usually in the past, if Kevin Love was healthy, he was kind of the guy that was going to get you your threes on this team. But he obviously did not have he's clearly past his prime and it's not going to be that guy anymore.
Tarion Prince was injured. He was able to kind of fill in for the side three a little bit. Nothing seemed to work out the moment they started benching Dre Drum. And yeah. All right, Sam. Well, we've reached the end of the autopsy report. The cause of death for the 2020-2021 Cleveland Cavaliers NBA season is, Sam, what say you?
No, I think the biggest thing was the loss of the veterans. And I mean, it's not like I'm saying something crazy because they were terrible once Drummond got benched and once they traded McGee and, Larry Nance Jr. spent a lot of time on the injured list in the second half of the year. That really impacted them defensively. He makes the biggest difference defensively on the team. So when he's not out there, when you don't have him and Drummond like you did at the beginning of the year, when you were playing inspirational basketball, those are two huge losses, particularly at the defensive end. And Jared Allen does a nice job. I think he's kind of up and down on defense, but I think to answer your question, it was the loss of the veteran players and the veterans in the locker room and the tough leaders who would give tough love out on the court. You have your coaching staff. One thing another GM brought up to me, Chase, just a couple days ago, who in that front office has played the game and dominated? Okay. Who in that front office has played in the NBA? Nobody that I know of. There's Mike Gansey, I think, had a cup of coffee with the Heat. He's the assistant GM. And who, let's get further down from that. Who on the coaching staff who's been through the battles in the NBA on the coaching staff? Not JB Bickerstaff. And that doesn't always mean that. I mean, Greg Popovich is a great coach, but he's also has some players on his staff, former players, that have brought it, and you need those kind of guys. And I think if you're not going to have those kind of guys in your front office or your coaching staff, you definitely need them in uniform. And when you get rid of a Drummond and a McGee, and all of a sudden you don't have those voices to help kind of lead the young guys and say, hey buddy, I've been there. I've done this. I know what you're going through. I know where the struggle is. I know how it feels to be successful and what you need to do to be better. I think they're screaming for that kind of voice, whether it's in the front office, in the locker room. It doesn't have to be ultra successful guys. You look what the Atlanta Hawks did. They're a young team who had a ton of injuries, just like the Cavs, but they went out and they got some veteran guys that, and Gallinari and Bogdanovich and at first rondo, then they traded them for Lou Williams. They added some veteran people who have been around the block in this league for a while. And the Cavs don't have that.
So I think the loss of veterans is definitely could be a cause of death. I want to offer a different one, Sam. I want to offer a front office, and if this is possible, this is the cause, which I'm going to say it's possible because it's our podcast. Front office nearsightedness and foresightedness. They couldn't see what's in front of them or what's going to happen in the future. Their lack of decisions, whether it's trading the veterans or handling situations. Like I lay this cause of death at the front office. I don't put it on the hands of 22, 23-year-old, 21-year-old guys who are just trying to ball, who don't know. And I don't put it, it's not, they're playing hard. They are doing all that they can. They're not put in a position to win. They're not put in the best position that maximizes their skill set. For whatever reason, all of this is at the, is on the backs of the front office. So I'm swallowing your answer and putting it into a much larger issue that there just don't seem to handle situations well. And they don't seem to handle situations well in the moment or the impact it could have in the future. And so I didn't want to say incompetence because that's not really nice. So I'll just say nearsighted and farsighted.
You hit the nail on the head, though. I mean, I do like the players that they have, that they've. I don't think in terms of. Let me put it this way: if Kobe Altman's not the GM next year and he is removed of his duties by ownership, it won't be because of Garland, Sexton, Allen, or Okoro. That won't be the reason. The reason will be because they don't trust the culture and his ability. And I'm not saying that this would be right or wrong. I'm just saying this is the way it's going to be if he's not here next season. And I think it's about 50-50 at this point.
Yeah.
If he's not, it's because they don't trust how he has handled Kevin Porter Jr. situation, J.R. Smith situation, the coaching kind of dramas, the Andre Drummond situation. They don't trust that when it gets time to get down and dirty and it's time to turn the corner and start actually winning some games, is he going to be the guy who has the right culture in place? If they think that he can, then he'll still be your general manager. If they feel like, they're in evaluation period right now, ownership team is Dan Gilbert and his guys. If they feel like there's somebody better out there that would lead this group to another level and be able to manage it when things don't go perfectly, then they're going to go out and hire that person. So I hear what you're saying, and I would say that ownership agrees with you that there are things that Kobe Altman has done well. I don't know that he's done anything that's fireable, but if he gets let go, it's going to be because of how those situations were handled, not because of the talent that he's accrued.
Well, ownership, give me a call. I'd love to offer more of my insight and expertise in owning an NBA team.
I can tell you they're thinking a lot like you are. So,
oh, geez. Well, there you have it. The 2020-2021 Cleveland Cavaliers autopsy report didn't quite end, Sam, how we wanted it to, but it ended it when it should have. That's for sure. We're going to take the team up north to a farm and let them just run around that farm up north. We're going to give them a burial at sea, whatever verbiage you want to use. That's what they deserve right now. And you all deserve so much more. You who listen and download and interact and talk with us. And so hopefully over the off season with the lottery and the draft, the team kind of makes some good selections and we get to watch some really fun, exciting, excellent basketball heading into 2021, 2022. And that does it for this episode of Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Thank you all so much for downloading and listening. Shouts to our presenting sponsor who is with us all season long at Aligned Health Center. Give it up for Aligned Health Center. Woo! Yeah. Check them out. They're just incredible people who really want to help you feel better. Shouts to the Press Play Podcast Network for making this possible. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Cavs on the Break. We always follow back. Make sure to follow Sam on Twitter at Amico Hoops. Get all of his work and writings at 48minutes.com and outkick.com for breaking news, insider info, and more. Do not miss out. Sam, another season in the books, brother.
Yeah, and you know what? We kind of paint a bleak picture, but I'll tell you what. You get the right draft pick. You make a right move or two. And you're back in business and you decide, you know what, we're going to go out and we're going to challenge this year. We're going to compete. We're going to challenge for a playoff spot and things could be much, much better next season. I really believe that. Yep, I really do. They could be bad again, but they could be much better as well.
I agree. Well, thank you all so much. Hope you guys have an awesome week and we'll catch you here in a couple of weeks, talk about the playoffs and who knows what else. Thanks, Sam.
All right. Thanks. We'll talk to you soon.
Peace.
Congratulations, Cleveland. Your decades-long wait is finally over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.